Welcome to FoxTales Movie Club. I'm Sebastian Fox.
And I'm Tony Sherman. Each video, we take a chosen movie and lead a discussion on our thoughts and opinions.
This week we have a sort of special episode, first video of the new year, and we are up in Acadia, Maine.
Yeah, it was a little chilly last night, a little brisk, but it's definitely warmed up nicely as the sun starts coming out.
So this week we are starting a series of going through the MCU with the original Iron Man.
Yeah.
After doing Iron Man 3 last week.
Yeah, just kind of got into that mood, I guess.
Yeah.
So going back to the beginning. So if you haven't seen this movie and don't want to hear any of the spoilers that we're going to get into, please go and watch the Iron Man 1 movie now.
Also, at the end of the video, we will be announcing the movie we'll be doing next week, which, I mean, we're going through the MCU, so you'll know.
So, yeah.
But we also are, this month, we have a third video planned for the month, so we will be announcing that at the end of the video.
This movie is, as we said already, Iron Man 1. Iron Man.
Iron Man is a movie that came out in 2008, directed by Jon Favreau, composed by Ramin Djawadi.
Djawadi?
And it stars Robert Downey Jr., Gwyneth Paltrow, Terrence Howard, Jeff Bridges, and Clark Gregg.
The director actually is an actor in the movie too.
Yeah.
I mean, how rare is that, right?
I think it happens more than you might think, but yeah.
Quite a bit, yeah. Anyway. But, yeah, so several of these characters actually continue coming back throughout the MCU.
Yeah.
Pepper Potts, Tony Stark, Jarvis.
Yeah, this is definitely, it's interesting to think how this movie started, what this movie started, really.
Yeah. It really just kind of grew from just one kind of Iron Man movie telling this story, and then now we have, about 20 or so movies. So it'll be interesting to go through these and talk about them and go over them as they continue to come out.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll be fun. We see Tony Stark when we first are introduced to him. Unless you've read the comics or know about the character, you get kind of this weird contrast to his character and the other characters in this opening scene, because you start off in this convoy,
right,
and we get into seeing these Army Rangers, military people in this Humvee, and we're hearing Back in Black. And it's playing on this tiny little cassette radio thing, something or other.
Yep.
And then we see this guy in this fancy suit boy holding like a scotch or some kind of liquor.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting introduction to the film. But I feel like it kind of puts us in a place to really start to understand who Tony Stark is in those opening scenes.
Yeah, especially through like the other characters, how they talk to him and such.
Interact
there's
with
one guy that raises his hand to ask the question.
Yeah, and asks to take the picture and throws the peace sign, and he says no gang sign. So it's like, okay, no, it's just a peace sign. But we get a very like they're almost kind of like nervous and intimidated by him, but then he very easily diffuses that feeling and gets into this very camaraderie with the people there. So it's very interesting to see how Tony Stark goes about that.
Yeah, I also kind of thought that scene was interesting because like he's very in control of the moment there, but then as soon as it turns, as soon as they get attacked, it very much flips, because that one guy that raised his hand is like now
calling out the orders, telling people what to do.
Telling him what to do.
Yeah, exactly. And Tony Stark's just like, what's going on? What's going on? What do I do?
Yeah.
And like completely is like out of the norm. So yeah, very interesting to see. So that opening scene then kind of like develops into that first arc, this first act of the movie, where we get Tony Stark is captured by these I'm trying to remember the name that they had for them.
The 10 rings.
10 rings, yeah. So we get him seeing that his technology, his weaponry, what his company has made is falling into the wrong hands, which I feel is kind of a normal kind of a setup for, the bad guys get to use weapons too, I guess. But then goes into how he tries to escape from that captivity.
Yeah, but I want to talk about before that first, when it cuts back to saying 36 hours.
36 hours earlier.
Because I think this movie does a very good job of exposition.
Yeah.
Because it has that first opening scene, or first scene when it comes back of the award ceremony.
Right. Yeah.
And it has the whole speech about like who Tony Stark is, which gives us a bunch of information without feeling forced.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So they definitely do a very good job of that showing and not telling, especially once we get a little bit later into that flashback scene. But that first speech ceremony, the award ceremony, we get introduced to Captain, I think, Captain or something, Colonel.
I think it's
Colonel. It might be Colonel. Yeah, Colonel Rhodes. Yeah, who actually is a different actor in this first one.
Yeah.
But I guess that's another story. But yeah, we get introduced to Colonel Rhodes, and we get introduced to Tony's kind of mentor / business partner, Obadiah.
Right.
So we get introduced to a lot of those characters right there at the very beginning.
Yeah, and then even Tony not being there tells a lot about his character.
Tells a lot about him. Yeah.
And I like the scene sort of quickly after this with the reporter.
Yeah, yeah. That he starts off not really wanting to talk with her. He's like, I don't know whether I should talk with this reporter or not.
He asks whether she's hot or not.
Yeah.
And that's kind of his, whether or not he'll talk with her.
Right, yeah. And he's like, okay. So, and then we get this very interesting thing of, while he turns around and talks to her and agrees to talk to her because she's attractive, the dialogue very quickly turns into this more intellectual thing, where they actually start asking very thought-provoking, provocative questions about what Tony Stark is doing and whether he realizes what is going on around him. So we very easily get into this, not just like this playboy side of Tony, but also getting into, he does actually kind of think about more than just drinking and gambling and playing around.
Yeah. Although some of his responses seem kind of rehearsed.
Sure.
He even says as much.
Right.
Some of them.
Yeah. Practice them in the mirror every night before bed. Yeah.
I find it interesting that because she asks how he feels about those two nicknames, the Merchant of Death and the Da Vinci of our time.
Yeah.
He says he doesn't paint. So he's not Da Vinci, but he likes Merchant of Death.
Yeah.
Just because he doesn't really understand what that means at that point in time.
Yeah, which is a little bit of irony, I guess, because we do have already a little bit of that scene of him being there in Afghanistan and dealing with the weapons exploding around him.
With his name on it.
With his name on it, no less, yeah. So it's kind of a little bit tongue-in-cheek that now that we're flashing back, we're getting, Merchant of Death. Yeah, I guess that does kind of apply to him a little bit.
Yeah, and then even later when he's captured, the guy calls him the greatest mass murderer of our time.
Of our time, yeah. I feel like that's a little bit of an overstatement, but I don't know. Maybe in the MCU, maybe people, the weaponry does kind of extend a bit out. I really like the scene where the reporter wakes up and we get a lot of this exposition and a lot of this setting without really even saying anything. As she just walks around his rooms and his mansion, we see the camera zooms out from the window. As the window, we see the window pane changing, and we get to see outside the window, and we see the ocean.
Even as Jarvis says, like the weather in Malibu, so you know exactly
where you are. Yeah, and we just see the lavish kind of setting, the home that he stays in, and we get all of this technology with Jarvis and her trying to go into various rooms and not being able to. We get a lot of that. Okay, we're understanding more of what kind of place this is for Tony.
We get the first introduction to Pepper.
To Pepper Potts. Yeah, that she, one of the duties that she has is to take out the trash.
Yeah.
So here's your suit. But yeah, we get a very nice introduction to Pepper in that she, just as well as the reporter and Tony, can kind of bite back with those one-liners. So it's really nice to be able to see those kind of interactions between the characters. So then when we get back to...
When it catches back up.
Back up to his capture, we're introduced to yet another character, Yinsen. Yeah, and Tony starts off a little bit hesitant, still I guess a little unsure of, he was already out of the norm when the explosions started happening around him with the convoy, and now he's in this cave. He doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know who's around him. So he sees this guy just casually just kind of shaving.
Yeah.
It's just like, well, I don't really know what's happening. But it's very fun to see once Tony realizes and starts talking with the Yinsen and gets a better picture of what's happening to him or to them there, how quickly he starts to take back over and take control again.
I mean, it still is a while, because like right away when the guy asks him to build a Jericho missile, he refuses, which is I find that a very interesting thing there.
Yeah.
But then when he goes outside and sees all of his own weapons and comes back inside, he has that conversation with Yinsen where he's very much like, I'm going to die here.
Yeah.
And Yinsen is like, well, it's a very important week for you then. And that kind of gets him to think through how to deal with this.
Yeah. Because, well, if that's really going to be how the story ends, then at least go out with a bang. But I think, I don't know how much the captives were watching him. They did have the cameras, and they were kind of checking up on him every once in a while. But you would think that they would more easily recognize that they have some of his weaponry already. They would recognize that he's not really building the Jericho missile. Yeah,
you even see him sometimes like he's like moving his leg and the thing's moving with it.
Right, yeah. And the captives, they look at the blueprints and some of the drawings and like, this doesn't look right. And like, well, it's probably fine. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, he knows a lot more than you realize about what he's doing. So it's kind of an interesting thing that he's just able to, over that week or so, build this entire suit from a box of scraps in a cave. But yeah. But we do get a very nice kind of closing interaction between Tony and Yinsen. That they're like, oh, Yinsen says that he's going to see his family once they get out of here. And then it's kind of like a little bit of a gut punch that you get, I am going to see my family, but
this was what I was planning
all along. So it's like, like to some degree, when you accept that this is the end, the body just kind of understands that and kind of starts to shut down. But then like once Yinsen had a reason to stay alive to try and help Tony, it gave him that motivation to kind of fight back even a bit more.
You get a pretty good action scene at the end of this first act.
Yeah.
With him using his experimental armor for the first time.
Right, yeah. Which, I don't know what the armor is made out of, but it is able to deflect all these bullets a lot more than I kind of expected.
Right.
So that was kind of interesting to see that.
So in the title card in this movie, I never noticed before that the letters all individually turn to the side. Like, you see the title card and they all turn and kind of fade away, which is something that happens in a lot of the Avengers movies.
Yeah.
Like in Age of Ultron, they turn and it turns into the subtitle.
Ah.
But I've never noticed that it started back
even from
the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah, all the way from the very beginning. That's interesting. Yeah, I think that's something that is always very interesting to see what direction they take those title cards, because like sometimes they don't even have them until like the end of the movie. But yeah, it's kind of, I don't know if that really still counts as a title card, even if it's kind of
it's a title. It's a card.
Yeah, it's a name maybe. So, but yeah, very interesting. We'll have to keep a watch out for what the other title cards end up looking like throughout the rest of the movies.
Yeah.
So we do get that action sequence of him using the suit and kind of running through and trying to, like, he uses all these different gadgets and parts of the suit, which is really kind of interesting that he's able to piece together all of these little things that become so much more elaborate as he develops these other suits that we see later in the movie and also in the other Iron Man films, and the other MCU films even. But kind of ends with him stepping out of the cave and walking through and destroying all of the weaponry that the 10 rings had accumulated over their whatever time that they were there.
Yeah, I'd kind of wondered if that was part of his plan, if he wanted to destroy all of his weapons so they wouldn't be used against the U.S. military.
Yeah.
Or if that just kind of happened because he was getting shot at.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like it was part of his plan, just like use those flamethrowers and just like destroy everything. But it might just been a crowd control, trying like suppressive, keep them back from being able to lash back out at him maybe. But
yeah. I mean, if like Jensen came out with him, I feel like he wouldn't have been able to protect him from the...
That's true. Yeah. So yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know. But yeah, it just kind of wraps up with him seeing the helicopters coming and rescuing him, finding him.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure how those helicopters found him so quickly, but I don't know. I guess they were trying to look for him.
You don't know how long it was. It could have been
That's true.
A day or two.
Could have been a little while that he was wandering around, looking around, waiting, but who knows. But yeah, we'll get into the next act in a few more miles maybe. Cool. Okay. So now we've hiked a little bit more, trying to take a short break.
Yeah, that was very steep.
Yeah, like 600 something feet straight down mountain cliff. That's hiking more, just kind of falling with style. Yeah. So moving into the next part of the film, next part of the movie, after Tony gets saved, rescued, he has a press conference and says he wants the cheeseburgers, and then kind of just says that he's going to stop a lot of production with Stark Industries.
Yeah.
And he stops production there, but then kind of starts his own production as he develops this more advanced Iron Man suit that he's coming up with.
Yeah, he learns that the way he was doing weapons before just wasn't actually the best way.
Right, yeah. So seeing a little bit of change in Tony as he tries to think through a better way to approach this. So as he's developing the suit, he goes through several different trials to test things here and there. Some of them more successful than others.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we get a little bit of comedy there. But then as he begins to head towards this city town location, whose name I'm constantly forgetting, Golden Mirror something or other. Gormak. Gundren. That's the name of the city, right?
Gomera.
Gomera. Yes, that one. Anyway, so we see that we get quite a bit more technology. We get another showcase of the Iron Man suit here. More
in the scene that comes in every Iron Man movie of the putting on the suit montage.
Yes, putting on the suit montage, flying around. Probably one of my favorite things is the scene where it has the little scan where it says, okay, here's our civilians, here's the bad guys. We get a nice shot of the scan of looking for the bad guys versus the civilians, and then has the like tiny little rocket bullet things that fly out and hit them. So we see kind of a similar kind of action sequence to when Tony's wearing that first suit, but now he's had all these modifications and he's much more adept at taking down the bad guys, so to speak.
Yeah, this action sequence is kind of interesting in that it doesn't really give a lot of problems that Tony faces. Like everything, he deals with it very easily.
Right. Yeah. He just says, bad guys show up, takes care of them. Tank shoots him out of the sky, deals with that, shoots a missile back at it. So yeah, it's shows a lot more of the strengths of the suit and how he's kind of dealt with how to prepare better for what he's going to be facing. We do get a little bit of foreshadowing to some of the third act material of some of the stuff that he might deal with when he finally fights with Obadiah, and Obadiah in his other suit. I guess we can't really call it an Iron Man suit.
I think it was the Iron Monger in the comics.
Iron Monger, okay. That's kind of like Iron Man, just Iron Manager, Iron Monger. Anyway, we're getting off track.
Yeah, I think Jeff Bridges kind of comes back. It kind of does a good job of hinting at it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is kind of obvious that he's the bad guy from the beginning, but it still just gives kind of a little bit at a time.
Right, yeah. Keeps a little bit of the suspense and keeps the audience thinking about it. But yeah, we start getting to the third act where Pepper starts getting into some of the files to try and figure out.
Yeah, very good scene.
Yeah,
there with Jeff Bridges coming in and just
spy movie, sneakily trying to get the files downloaded and alt-tabbing over to a different window when necessary. So yeah, we'll get a very nice scene there.
So it's interesting that Obadiah Stane's character, he can't recreate the miniaturized arc reactor.
Right. Yeah.
And that kind of sparks the end of this movie of him taking it from Tony and him almost
That's true.
dying there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We do have the Tony needing to go back to the miniature arc reactor that he had earlier in the movie to try and come back and fight back against Obadiah. So we see Tony changing and developing this new material, more luxurious maybe, and needing to revert back to what he had originally to be able to hold his own against Obadiah once Obadiah takes that from him.
Yeah.
It's kind of feel like Obadiah, like I get like almost like a feeling like almost like a sibling rivalry type of thing between Obadiah and Tony. That like Obadiah was wanting all of this stuff, and Tony, this young upstart, this son of the original Stark.
Yeah.
The son, just kind of like young boy, just rushes in and kind of takes over what Obadiah maybe saw as his chance to gain a little bit more power and a little bit more.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd call it siblings, but yeah, that's the same sort of. They both kind of had relationship with Howard Stark. So
Howard, that's right. Yes.
So yeah, the relationship between them is interesting because throughout most of the movie they seem very friendly towards each other as well.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it seemed like it was a facade on Obadiah's part.
Yeah.
That he was just putting up a good face for the company to be able to let things go smoothly until he was finally able to try and wrest control from Tony. Getting into how Tony finally does, how Iron Man finally does overpower Obadiah. It's kind of an interesting way that he does that.
The icing?
Yeah, with the icing problem.
Yeah, I like that they bring that back from before.
Right, yeah. So it's like, it's so funny how Tony just uses whatever is around him to try and gain an advantage over his opponents. So
really something you see in Iron Man 3, but here you can definitely see
it. Yeah. The film does wrap up with another one of these press conferences.
Yeah.
And we get
appearance of Christine
Everhart, yeah. And I absolutely love this little ending where she asks him about Iron Man, and Tony just kind of, whatever, yeah, I am Iron Man. And all the other reporters stand up and start shouting, and she just sits there smug. It's like, I knew it. She knew it the whole time. So I just love that way that the movie just ends on just a great note.
Yeah.
So, yeah. This is just a fun movie all around. Very enjoyable.
That's interesting with her character, especially because she shows up at that party halfway through, and she's very much like, you did this to Golmira.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that she has that sort of, no, I see you as this hero now.
Right, yeah. So we get kind of that sequence of threes where we see her first introduced, we see her again in the second arc, the second act, and then again there right at the end.
Yeah.
So very common kind of formula for this storytelling movie kind of thing.
Yeah. So we're not in Acadia anymore.
Sadly.
Yeah. Sort of the first hike ended up being more taxing, and then it started raining. So
yeah, didn't get what we wanted with the rest of the shooting.
So now we're back home in Georgia and gonna continue on here. So before we had kind of gotten through all of the 3-act structure, just kind of going through
the plot and the story.
Now I kind of want to get into the characters.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I know of one character. I know there's a Tony Stark. Yeah. I think that's about the only character I know.
Only one?
No. Anyway.
Yeah. So let's talk about the characters that were only in this movie.
Okay.
Starting like Stain. Like, what did you think of him as a villain?
I saw a lot of parallels to the third movie, which I think we've already talked a little bit about, but I feel like he seemed more like a comic book villain in some sense, where he had kind of like these henchmen and other like sub villains underneath him, kind of do a lot of his work for him, at least up to the climax of the movie.
You're saying he's more Stain's more comic booky than?
Yeah, I felt that's kind of how I felt. Yeah,
because Killian had a lot of underlings as well.
That's true. Yeah, So there's parallels between those two. Like I feel like both of them are kind of those kind of comic book villains with having all these other people below them. Yeah.
Yeah, I like what's the actor's name? Jeff Bridges. I like Jeff Bridges' performance in this movie, but I feel like the writing could have been a little bit better for him.
Yeah, and some of the things that I was reading about and kind of picked up on in some of those ending scenes, one of the things with him going after Pepper Potts and seemed like shifting away from the kind of character he had been earlier in the film, where he had been kind of more hands-off and letting all of his people under him do a lot of the dirty work, and he didn't get his hands dirty. And so then there at the end, with him becoming quite a bit more aggressive towards Pepper and Tony, seemed a little bit of a kind of a drastic shift. But I guess maybe it was also the suit kind of changing him as a character as well.
Yeah, I'm also just not sure what his motives were entirely. Because depending on that could make sense, him wanting to be the only one in control of the suit. But
sure.
I'm not sure what end he was working towards there.
Yeah. So it was funny. Even in my notes when I was writing over the different characters, I just wrote Obadiah motives ? So I was like, okay, so like what really is his motivation with, is he just wanting to kind of just take control of the corporation? You know, he felt like Stark took it away from him. So I wasn't really sure what those motivations were, but yeah, might just be that greed and pride, wanting to have that power maybe.
So the one character that has been in both of the movies that we talked about so far, but is not portrayed by the same actor, James Rhodes.
Colonel.
So how do you think Terrence Howard compares to?
I don't know. I kind of like him. I kind of like the portrayal, but I really like Cheadle a lot too. So it's kind of hard.
I couldn't see Don Cheadle in this movie. And I can't see Terrence Howard in any of the other movies.
Right.
It's just they're completely different.
So I guess it just kind of shows the strengths of how they put that character, those actors in those roles, made it really fit well with them in the movie that they were in.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But we also haven't talked about the character Jensen very much yet.
That's true. Yeah. So like his Tony's mentor and kind of interpreter guide when he was trapped in the cave. So definitely a very big character building person for Tony. So him showing up in that cave and just being kind of out of the norm, and so Jensen giving a little bit more structure and saying, okay, I know how to deal with these kinds of people. Let's try and develop a plan.
Yeah.
So
this last watch through, I never really thought about it before, but I found it very interesting that he's in this place where he's captured and all that, but he's still wearing a suit with like a pocket square and everything. Yeah. And he's shaving when we first see him, so he's like trying to keep himself presentable. So it's like, I don't know how long he had been there as this hostage captive, but it seems like he's really kind of grown comfortable with this location of wherever he is. Yeah. I don't know if this really has anything to do with anything, because I didn't really look at what Tony was wearing before, but in the last scene when he's doing the press conference, he has a pocket square as well, and I didn't know if that was a callback or not. Yeah. It'd be interesting to double check that and look back at that. Yeah, could be. So Pepper Potts is the love interest in this one. I think out of the the first four, I guess 5 movies that established all the characters before the Avengers. Right. I think Pepper's one of the better love interests. Yeah. Like, let's see. Going through some of the other ones. I don't really remember a ton from the Hulk, so I don't really remember what Betty was like. That's true. I've actually not seen the Incredible Hulk, so I'll be interested to get to that first viewing soon. Yeah, Haley Atwell was pretty good, but I would definitely say that Gwyneth Paltrow did better than Natalie Portman. Okay. Before. Yeah. So let's see. I was going to say something about Pepper Potts being kind of like, also thinking back to Iron Man 3, being kind of like this action woman, but I guess like you also have Captain America's love interest. I can't remember the character's name, but Carter, that's right. Yeah, and like she's also like this military person, so I can't really just say that Pepper's the only action female character that we have as this love interest. Yeah. But she definitely does come across that way quite a bit in this one, like able to. We don't see a lot of the action sequences with her in this first one, but we do get that feeling that she's able to kind of keep up with
Tony.
Yeah, well, I think she's able to keep up with Tony, like with the banter and everything. Like they have a very good chemistry there. But I don't know. In the action scenes, she seems kind of out of water there.
Sure.
Like when Coulson puts the little explosive to open the door.
Yeah.
Or in the very end when she's even setting up the arc reactor to blow up, she just kind of seems like she's not really sure of what she's doing.
Yeah, yeah, and she like is questioning whether like this is what they really should be doing or not, you know. And so like Tony's has to be like, just do it. This is the last chance we have, kind of thing. So yeah, I guess that is kind of a shift that we see from the first one into that third one, where maybe gaining a little bit more confidence in some of those more action sequences.
Even at the end of the third one, after she does the whole thing where she blows up Killian, she turns around and she says, "That was really violent." So I don't know. It could just, I don't know exactly how much.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's just how she is.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
I know you were wanting to talk about Jarvis a little bit, did you?
Yeah. I just think there's this idea of having like this computer AI butler kind of thing. I just find it so fascinating.
Yeah.
And so very just cool. Just like a cool thing to have. So it's like this thing is like that feels like the future, but this is also like Iron Man has these things that are beyond what the rest of technology seems to be at. But so it's just a very cool kind of character who at the first part just kind of seems like, okay, yeah, this is just someone who's this watching the house kind of thing. Like this is just this character who's a voice, this disembodied voice, but we find even like once Iron Man's in the suit, it's still there kind of guiding him and giving him direction and kind of giving him a place to, kind of like a platform to stay on.
Yeah, as we watch through these movies, I think it'll be interesting to see if the character of Jarvis kind of changes throughout these movies, because it's not really something I've just always seen him as an AI, as just the static thing. But I don't know. It'd be interesting to see if he actually does have some evolution. Yeah.
So definitely something to be looking for in each of the future films. Yeah, as we see him. So another character that I really liked, and will be another one that we want to look to for the future films, is Agent Coulson.
Yes. And
how he and even Nick Fury at the very end of the movie are kind of introducing and setting up this Avengers initiative. So kind of giving us a little taste of what might be coming even from this kind of first film.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting how they did that with having S.H.I.E.L.D. be kind of the connective tissue between Phase 1 until the Avengers. Right,
yeah.
Coulson's definitely a very interesting character. This one, he was written in such a way that you're supposed to disappear until the very end. Like, you're not really supposed to remember him very much until the very end. But
right.
It's still just like knowing him from the other movies. It's just kind of, he's a very interesting character. Yeah.
And it's just like, he gets introduced, he talks with Pepper Potts, and then it's just like, okay, yeah, we'll get back to you later. And then it's like, you don't really see him until right there at the end. So very, it doesn't feel like that Deus Ex Machina kind of thing where it's like, oh yeah, okay, of course this like secret agent guy comes and saves the day. It's like, okay, yeah, he was someone that was introduced earlier and set up as this character with, this kind of organization. Yeah, so it was really well done, I felt.
And what about the main actor?
Yes.
Tony Stark.
Our final guy, yeah. So, definitely see a lot of like character changing, a lot of character growth from Tony, especially with him and his attitude towards like his weapons throughout the film. So that's definitely a pretty big changing point in who he is, especially from like the Act 1 to the Act 2.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how in the first act he's portrayed as like kind of this mean character almost. But really it's just he's never really thought about what his weapons are really like. because throughout the movie later, he keeps saying, like, he thought that they were only giving the weapons to the U.S. government.
Right. Yeah.
So he never even considered the fact of what his weapons were doing out in the world.
That's true. And like, even when the reporter goes and talks with him that second time, he mentions something along the lines of, "Do you know what you're doing? What you and your company are doing?" He's like, "Well, I'm not my company." So it's like, well, okay, yeah, you're not, I guess, but you kind of are. Like, you are Stark Industries, so it's like you should probably have a much stronger understanding of what's going on, what Obadiah is doing. Yeah. So it was nice to see him recognize that and then kind of like grow into that and like say, okay, well, what am I going to want to do with Stark Industries? What am I going to be doing now that this Iron Man persona is being created? And even in the end of the movie, that he's completely taking on that identity of Iron Man and just letting it be known. So very nice to see how that affects him throughout the movie.
Yeah, it's interesting how he's very different from most of the comic book heroes of that time. Like, because like Spider-Man was like the big one around there, and Batman and all of that. But he's a lot more cocky and just very self-interested for most of the movie. And and I feel like it's interesting looking at like the flaws of a lot of the different characters. And I feel like in a lot of the movies, you only get just like little pieces of these flawed things that are easy for them to fix or easy for them to wrap up by the movie's end. So I think it's very interesting with just previously watching Iron Man 3, now going back to Iron Man 1, and then being able to see, okay, what are we going to be looking at as these movies develop, that we're seeing those deeper character flaws being brought out and being discussed and then looked into in those movies. So it's very fascinating. So I guess a couple closing thoughts, couple closing ideas. What are some other things that you wanted to get a chance to talk about that we didn't get to in this episode? I thought there were a few interesting camera just shots, the way that they did it, just like the handheld stuff during the testing. And then near the end, there's the scene where Obadiah is taking the arc reactor out of Tony's chest, and it does this Dutch tilt where it puts them, like Tony's sitting down and Obadiah's above him, but the way the camera's set, they're almost level on the screen. So I found that a very interesting way to frame it. So like kind of gives another way to look at that kind of like shift in power, like by using the camera and doing that shift or that tilt or however it works. So very interesting. Did you have anything that you were wanting to point out? Like some of the music, like I'd read some stuff about, and then I don't know if this was just like a couple like more vocal critics or who exactly this was or what this was coming from, but I read some things about saying that a lot of the music seemed too rocky and too involved with the electric guitar and drums and bass and kind of like this other kind of feel, and not as much orchestra and symphony and things like that. But listening to it, I definitely feel like, okay, I hear drums and electric guitar and stuff like that, and it works really well with Tony's character. But there's also a lot of the orchestration is still the orchestra, the strings and the brass and the woodwinds and things like that. And it's like, feels almost kind of like the Led Zeppelin song Kashmir in some sense, that we're getting a lot of this kind of like rocky, but it's an orchestral kind of setting. So and it definitely fits the tone of the movie.
So it's like, I don't understand why some of the critics are saying that it wasn't good or wasn't a good fit for the movie or whatever it was that they were saying exactly.
I've heard a lot of people say that the music like up through phase 2 is just not great, but I honestly think some of the movies have pretty decent scores. I never understood that. Definitely very enjoyable to just listen to, and also fits with the characters and the tone and the setting of the movie. I was wondering if some of the times, if it wasn't really that the scores were bad, but if it's just that the way that they were utilized, it didn't bring the score to the forefront, so it didn't really create an emotional connection with any of the themes or anything.
That's possible. Yeah, that's possible. I did recognize as I was listening to the soundtrack a few times, like the Mark I and Mark II songs, those themes. Like I did recognize a few of the different themes, like motifs or whatever, use some of the music terminology, but I felt like I noticed some of those coming through. But probably the main one that I pick up on when I'm watching some of the more recent movies is like this Avengers theme.
Yeah.
And so like that's something that I feel like they really developed and started using there in future movies.
Yes.
So it feels like it definitely has progressed and definitely developed quite a bit as the movies continued to come out, but still found this one great.
Listening to this movie's soundtrack and Iron Man 3's soundtrack, there's just like none of the themes had like carried over. It's completely different. It's strange.
Yeah. So very, very fascinating, very interesting to continue to listen to.
So
yeah,
this movie has a post-credit scene.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting thing to do for a movie to do.
Yeah. It was something where I remember watching this movie and hearing about you have to stay through till the end of the credits.
Yeah.
There's more to the movie afterwards. And then seeing the scene with Nick Fury and just being like, talking to Tony, like, we got to talk about this S.H.I.E.L.D. and this Avengers stuff going down. And so from then on, whether it was a Marvel movie or just any kind of movie, I'm asking people, don't tell me anything, but should I be staying through the credits?
Yeah.
Do I need to stay and just like keep watching? And it's like even on movies where it's like people were saying no, there's nothing there. I'm like, well, I still need to check.
Yeah.
I still need to sit through and just watch. So it was very interesting to see that kind of shift in how I watched movies.
Yeah.
Whereas like
it's interesting just how widely that idea spread throughout Hollywood.
Yeah. So definitely something that influenced a lot of other films from then on.
I also thought it was interesting that I was thinking about this earlier this week. One of the lines that Fury says, he says, like, you think you're the only superhero. You're part of a larger world. You just don't know it yet.
Yeah.
But I was thinking through the other heroes of Phase 1, and all of them existed before Tony Stark.
Yeah.
But he wouldn't have been talking about any of them, which is very strange.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't until Ant-Man with Hank Pym that there was a hero that would have existed at that time.
Yeah.
So it's very, like, I don't know.
I guess maybe it's just their attempt at, because clearly they knew that they were going to be wanting to do this, so they're kind of like this foreshadowing of, okay, yeah, there's more to these characters, there's more heroes out there, but maybe didn't quite think through, okay, well, at this point in time, which ones are we going to be thinking about and talking about as we're approaching Tony? Yeah, maybe.
All right, that will do it for this video. We would like to thank Mel Eastup for creating our opening theme.
And join us in the comment section below to go over any other questions you might have, any discussion you want to join in. Let us know your thoughts on the first Iron Man movie and any of your thoughts on what the upcoming movies are going to be looking like. Yeah,
I definitely had a lot more things that I was thinking about, but this episode felt pretty long already.
Yeah.
Definitely looking forward to that. Forgot my line. So the next movie we'll be doing is The Incredible Hulk. But also at the end of this month, there will be a 5th Tuesday in which we will be doing a special episode.
Yeah.
And we will be talking about the movie Shaun of the Dead, taking a short break from the MCU.
Right. First time ever seeing this movie too, so definitely excited to get into this one.
Not my first time. It's very good.
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been FoxTales Movie Club. Thanks for watching. I'm Tony.
And I'm Fox, and we will see you in the next video.